Halloween night, and we decided to do something different that year. Me, Logan, and Drew, three high school seniors clinging to that weird stretch of time before graduation where everything feels both endless and about to disappear. We weren't into Halloween in the traditional sense. We were more into finding weird places to explore, old train yards, shut down motels, forgotten buildings tucked deep into the woods. That night, we wanted something better than the usual. We wanted a real scare. Something that didn't feel staged or stupid. Logan had just the thing. He told us about this house out in the hills, totally off-grid. Said his cousin's ex-boyfriend had gone up there a few years back with a guy who worked trail maintenance. The house wasn't on any map, not even the old topographical ones. Apparently, it had been abandoned since the mid-'80s, when the family that lived there packed up overnight after their youngest kid drowned in a well behind the house. They left everything. Furniture, clothes, even food in the fridge, or so the story went. That was enough for us. We left around 9:30, drove maybe 40 minutes out past Silver Creek. The road narrowed down to gravel, then to something barely wide enough for a truck. Logan parked at the end of the trail, next to a faded marker that looked more like a snapped tree limb than a sign. The rest we had to do on foot. The path was almost gone, mostly just weeds and dirt, with thorny brush clawing at our jeans. It was a steep height too. Took us about 15 minutes of climbing before the tree started to thin and we saw it. The house wasn't huge, but it looked wrong, like the ground had shifted under it and the building had slouched to one side. The wood was gray and dry looking, shingles half peeled off the roof. The porch sagged in the middle, and one of the columns had cracked completely, like someone had kicked it on the way out. There wasn't even a real front door. Just an opening with splintered wood where the knob used to be. Logan kicked it once and it swung open like it was waiting for us. Inside, the air hit hard. That thick, rotting kind of smell you only find in places the world has forgotten. It was colder too, not freezing, just enough to feel out of step with the night outside. The furniture was all still there, covered in dust and old floral sheets that had turned gray. It looked like someone tried to preserve everything and then gave up halfway through. The stairs to the second floor were to the left, curving upward in a tight spiral that groaned just from us looking at it. We spread out on the first floor, taking in the weird stillness. The kitchen was first mismatched plates in the sink, one of them split neatly in half. Cabinets wide open like someone left in a hurry. We stepped into the living room, which had a massive fireplace filled with broken bricks and what looked like burned-up photo frames. Next to that was a kind of study, I think. Bare walls, a torn rug, and right in the center of the floor, a pale blue rotary phone. It wasn't plugged into anything, but the cord was still wrapped tight, like it had just been dropped there. Drew noticed the window. From the outside, someone had nailed a thick sheet of plywood over it, fresh nails by the look of it. But the inside glass was shattered, jagged pieces still hanging from the frame. Something had broken in. We went upstairs. I took the room at the end of the hall. It felt smaller than the others, probably a kid's bedroom once. The wallpaper had faded blue stars and peeling corners, and there was a little iron bed frame shoved against the wall. Two wooden shelves sat empty except for a layer of dust and a few bits of something dry and sharp that might have been bird bones. I crouched down near the closet to take a picture on my phone. That's when I heard Drew say my name, not shouting, just steady, calm but too calm. It was the way she said it that made me pause. I stood up and opened the door. No one was there. I stepped into the hallway and the floor groaned behind me. I turned around fast. Nothing. Then I caught a new smell, faint but sharp. The musty stink of old furniture gave way to something metallic and burnt, like ozone mixed with spoiled meat. My throat tightened. I called out for Drew, then for Logan. No answer. I walked toward the stairs, heart picking up. Drew's door was closed. I knocked, waited. Nothing. I touched the knob. It twitched under my hand just slightly, like someone on the other side was doing the same thing. I stepped back fast. Then Logan called out from downstairs. Just one word, guys. He didn't sound scared, just confused, like he'd found something that didn't match. I ran down and found him standing by the front door, which was shut. He looked at me and said, "I didn't touch it." I asked if Drew had come down. He said no. We both went back upstairs. Her room was empty. No sign of her. But her flashlight was on the floor, beam angled toward the corner. That's where we saw it. A floorboard that didn't match the rest. Cleaner, newer. Logan knelt down and started working at it with his knife. It popped loose easily. Beneath it was a shallow hole. Inside, a little girl's dress rotted, stiff and brown with age. A broken pair of glasses. And something wrapped in cloudy plastic. I couldn't make myself look at it for long. That's when we heard it. Footsteps above us. The attic. There wasn't an obvious hatch. Just a seam in the ceiling with a thin metal ring. Logan didn't even hesitate. He reached up, pulled it down, and the ladder creaked open. He looked at me and said, "I'll go. Just wait here." I told him not to. He said he'd be fast. He climbed up and disappeared into the dark. I stood there with Drew's flashlight in my hand, pointing it uselessly into the empty hallway. The silence felt heavy, like the house itself was listening. Then Logan screamed. It wasn't pain, it was wrong. Like he saw something he couldn't describe. A sound that cut off too quickly. I went up after him. There was nothing. Just beams and rafters and dust. No Logan. I spun around when the ladder creaked behind me. No one was there. I climbed back down and bolted. I didn't think, didn't yell, didn't wait. Just ran. Straight out the door, down the trail, smashing through the brush. My legs kept moving even after I lost feeling in them. When I got to the truck, Drew was inside. She was curled up in the passenger seat, face pale, eyes wide. She said she never went inside, that she called out for us, that we didn't answer. I didn't believe her. Until she showed me the photos. There were only two of us walking into the house, me and Logan. No Drew. She said 10 minutes after we went in, she saw movement in the upstairs window. Something shifting just behind the glass. She didn't go in after that. Logan never came back out. We called the cops. I told them everything, showed them the pictures, described the attic, the plastic wrap thing, the floorboard. They searched the house for 2 days. They found the bundle, said it was a baby monitor. Battery still inside, dead for decades. But no attic. They showed me blueprints. Just beams and roof above the second floor. No crawl space. No hatch. I know what I climbed into. After that, I couldn't sleep in a quiet room. Ridge and I were both 20 when we drove out to that dead little mining town in the Appalachian foothills on Halloween night. He's my cousin, about 6 months older than me, and at the time, he was all in on urban exploration. He had the gear, the GoPros, the maps pulled from sketchy message boards. I think he liked the thrill of it more than the actual footage, though he did post a few things online just to say he'd been there. I wasn't into it, not like him. I didn't even own a flashlight back then. But when he mentioned this place called the Holloway House, some broken down Victorian that had half sunk into a hillside, I figured I'd go. Not because I wanted to film anything, or because I thought it'd be fun. I just didn't like the idea of him going by himself. Ridge was the kind of guy who'd climb a rotten staircase just to prove it wouldn't collapse. And he usually dragged me along for backup, like, "Hey, if I fall through the floor, you can call 911. So I said, yeah, why not? Halloween night, nothing else going on. I figured we'd poke around, get spooked by an owl or whatever, then drive home and eat gas station snacks on the way. The town wasn't even really a town anymore. Graveridge, I think it was called. Population 0, long gone. Took us about 3 hours to get there, longer than I expected, honestly. Once we left the main road, it was all sharp turns and barely there gravel paths. Trees pressing in on both sides, road signs rusted out or missing completely. My phone dropped service halfway there and never came back. Ridge thought that was hilarious. We parked at this little pull-off near a busted gate, just enough room for the car. The sun was already dipping behind the hills by the time we got out. I remember thinking how quiet it was. No birds, no wind, just trees standing there like they were waiting for something. The hike down wasn't long, maybe 15-20 minutes. But it was steep, and the house was almost hidden in this weird little gulch, like it had been pushed into the earth. The roof sagged hard on one side, and the second floor looked like it had taken a direct hit from a boulder. Vines had clawed their way across most of it. A few windows were intact, but most were just jagged glass and crooked frames. The porch was useless, leaning so far to one side it looked ready to fold in half. We walked around the side instead, stepping over roots and old boards that looked like they'd been there for decades. Ridge was loving it. Called it the perfect Halloween special. He had one GoPro strapped to his chest and another mounted on the dash of his car. He kept making jokes about ghost hunting YouTubers and fake scream sound effects. He kicked the front door lightly, and it creaked open in one long groan. Sounded more alive than it had any right to. Inside, it smelled like wet dirt and old wood. Not moldy, just earthy. Like the whole place had absorbed the ground beneath it. There were some old chairs, all broken. An iron stove that looked like it hadn't been touched in a century. Wallpaper peeling in long curls, showing bare wood underneath. Everything felt soft and rotten. I kept expecting a raccoon or possum to burst out from a corner, but the house was still. Not just quiet still, like time didn't move the same way in there. Ridge went deeper in, filming and narrating. I hung back near the front room. Just didn't feel right stepping too far in. There was something off about the way the air sat, too heavy, almost fuzzy around the edges. Hard to explain. After a few minutes, Ridge decided to go upstairs. The staircase looked brittle, the kind where each step dips when you touch it. I told him it wasn't a good idea. He shrugged it off, said he'd be quick. Typical Ridge. The stairs creaked like they were screaming under him. I stood at the base, watching, holding my breath with every step he took. Then he stopped. I didn't hear him walking anymore. A few seconds passed. Then he said, "Hey, can you come here?" That wasn't like him. Ridge didn't ask for help in places like this. I asked what was wrong. He said again, "Just come here." So I did. Carefully. The stairs moaned under my weight, but I made it up. The hallway up top had 3 doors. Ridge was standing in the one on the right. He wasn't filming anymore. His arms were at his sides. He looked small. Not scared, just kind of empty. I walked over and looked in. The room was bare. No furniture, no clutter. Just wooden floorboards, a broken window with wind brushing through, and a single wall completely covered in tiny black handprints. Hundreds of them. All different sizes, all flat against the wood. They looked like soot, or maybe ash, or paint if someone was trying to make it look like soot. I asked him, "Did you do that?" He shook his head. "Did you touch them?" No answer. We didn't run. We didn't yell. We just turned and left. Walked back through the house, out the door, through the trees. Ridge didn't say a word. He stayed behind me the whole time. When we got to the car, he got in without a sound. I didn't ask questions. I just drove. Maybe halfway home he started whispering, not to me, just to himself, low and steady. I thought maybe he was doing a voiceover for the footage, but the camera was off. I checked. Then I looked over, and he was staring, not out the window, at the inside of the passenger door. That's when he whispered, "Don't move." I froze. "What?" He didn't look at me. "There's something in the car." I pulled over, fast. The gravel kicked up. The brakes squealed. Ridge opened the door and jumped out, stumbled into the ditch on the side of the road. I followed, heart pounding, expecting, I don't know what. Something. But there was nothing. Back seat was empty. No noise. No shapes. Just our car idling on the shoulder and the sound of Ridge breathing like he'd run a mile. I asked him again what he saw. He finally said, "It looked like the handprints." He wouldn't get back in the car. Said he was walking. And he did. 5 full miles to the nearest gas station. I drove behind him, hazards flashing, crawling at walking speed the whole way. When we got to his house, he barely spoke. Just said he needed sleep. I didn't push. The next day, nothing. He acted like it hadn't happened. Wouldn't bring it up. Wouldn't look at the footage. Weeks passed. He still wouldn't talk. Then his mom called me 2 weeks later. Said Ridge was gone all day, came back late covered in mud, shaking. His room was torn up, mirrors shattered, bed ripped apart, camera gear scattered across the floor. When she finally got him to talk, all he said was that he'd gone back to the house. I saw him a few weeks after that. He looked, worn down. He told me little bits. Not all of it, just enough. He said the handprints were still there, but this time they were fresh, wet, new, and they kept multiplying every time he turned around, more had appeared. He tried taking photos, but nothing worked. His phone, the GoPro, even the flashlight died the second he raised it. Then he saw it. Said there was something crouched in the hallway. Long arms, bent wrong. No face, just a smear. like a mouth that someone had tried to erase. It didn't move. Just watched him. He told it he was sorry. That was it. He left and never went back. Ridge doesn't film anymore, doesn't even own a camera, won't even drive near that part of the mountains. I was 21 when I went into the Marrow House. It's this old leaning thing just off Buckner Road, a couple miles outside Glen Cross. If you blink, you'll miss it, or maybe you won't. People don't like to admit they've seen it at all. Growing up, we'd swap stories about it behind the gym or out in the woods. Kids would double-dog dare each other to throw rocks at it or peek through a window. I never went past the tree line. Even back then, the place just felt off, like it didn't want you looking too long. And every story about it ended the same way. Nobody stuck around. Last Halloween, my cousin Roan bet me I wouldn't go inside. Not just stick my head in or poke around the porch, but actually go through the whole house, film it, and make it back out. He said if I did, he'd hand over the cash he'd set aside for his usual Halloween tradition. Cheap whiskey, discount fireworks, and a hangover that'd last until Tuesday. Rowan talks a big game, but when it comes to anything remotely risky, he's usually the first to flinch. That night, though, he brought back up two of his friends, Matt and Trev. They parked Rowan's rattling old pickup near the base of the property, half hidden under bare trees. When I saw them all lined up in the cab, lights off, engine idling like they were ready to bolt, I knew they weren't just joking around this time. I told them to stay put. Keep the truck running if you're scared, I said. I'll be back in 15. They didn't argue. The Marrow House sits on a low rise just above the road. The porch had collapsed in places, and the siding looked melted from years of rain and rot. 3 stories, maybe 4, if you counted whatever was below. Most of the windows were either smashed out or boarded up with planks warped like driftwood. The front steps were too rotten to trust, so I circled around to the back where an old basement window hung crooked and half open. Getting inside wasn't hard. What hit me first was the air thick, damp, and sour, like wet drywall and something older. The kind of smell that settles in your throat instead of your nose. My flashlight beam cut across old furniture covered in dust and sag. Chairs with split cushions. A floor lamp resting sideways against a cracked cabinet. It looked like the place had been abandoned in the middle of someone packing up and then just frozen. Each room had this odd stillness, like it was holding its breath. I filmed as I went, just slow pans of the rooms with my phone and occasional commentary to prove I wasn't skipping anything. I kept saying dumb things out loud. Dining room, broken chandelier, some busted plates, mostly to hear my own voice. Silence felt too heavy. I needed something to fill the space. The stairs creaked but held. A few of the steps were cracked down the middle, so I moved slowly, testing each one with my heel before shifting weight. Just as I reached the second-floor landing, I heard it. Not the usual groans of old wood or wind slipping through broken windows. This was distinct. The sound of a boot sole dragging across grit. Just one step, then nothing. I turned fast, flashlight cutting down the staircase behind me. Empty. Then my phone buzzed in my pocket. Rowan, tell your buddy to stay outside. We're not driving anyone else home. I texted back immediately. What buddy? He replied. We saw someone else go in after you. Through the back window. Right after you disappeared inside. I just stood there, phone still in my hand, trying to wrap my head around it. I hadn't heard anything. Not even a breeze. I scanned the hallway ahead, a row of bedroom doors, some hanging open, others shut tight, wallpaper peeling in strips. The air upstairs felt denser, like something stagnant had risen over time and settled up here. I kept the camera rolling, narrating again just to keep my nerves from boiling over. Second floor, hallway, nothing interesting yet. Each room I passed looked untouched but not naturally so. The beds were made too neatly. Dust lay in strange patterns, more like it had been sprinkled than gathered. One chair sat exactly in the center of a room with no other furniture. It all felt staged, like someone had recreated the idea of an abandoned house but didn't quite get it right. At the far end of the hallway was a single door that didn't match the rest. Heavier, darker wood. No handle, just an old knob tarnished to green. I didn't want to touch it. My hand was halfway there when I stopped cold. Breathing. Not mine. Not mine. Slow, shallow inhales. Right on the other side of the door. So close I thought I could feel the warmth of it through the wood. I switched off my light, held still, waited maybe 30 seconds, maybe a full minute. Then I stepped backwards slow as I could, retracing each step until I hit the stairs again. That's when I caught a flash in the corner of my eye, a mirror on the hallway wall, oval, cracked around the edges, and in the reflection clearer than anything I'd seen all night was someone standing directly behind me, not moving, just watching. I spun around, nothing. Turned back to the mirror, now fogged over, like someone had just exhaled onto the glass. I backed down the stairs, every step loud now. As I reached the bottom, something creaked from deeper in the house. I turned my light toward the kitchen and saw the basement door swing open slow and steady. I hadn't noticed it before. It hadn't been open when I came in. My whole body was telling me to leave. I should have. But something pulled me toward it. Pride, maybe. Or the promise of shutting Rowan up for good. I told myself I'd go halfway down, catch a quick shot, and bolt. The basement was colder. Real cold, like earth chill. The stairs were narrow and uneven. Dirt floor. Stone walls with mortar crumbling like sugar cubes. Halfway down, my flashlight caught something carved into the stone. Not just graffiti deep, worn etchings, circles, symbols, rows of names and dates. One near my shoulder read, October 31, B.E.N.W., Ben Whitner, one of Rowan's friends. The same Ben who bailed on the trip last minute, said he had a bad dream about the place and didn't want to tempt fate. I ran my fingers over the letters. They were fresh. That's when I turned around. She was there, at the top of the stairs. She looked human, at first. Pale skin, hollow cheeks, mouth slightly open, hair just brushing her shoulders. She didn't speak or move. Her eyes didn't track me, but her mouth opened wider and wider. No sound came out. I pushed past her, or tried to. She didn't resist, just pivoted slightly as I brushed her shoulder like she wasn't fully anchored to the floor. I didn't look back, crawled through the same window I'd entered, hit the dirt with my elbow, and stumbled to my feet. The truck was gone. No lights. No engine. Just the tree line and the road beyond. I tried calling Rowan. No bars. Nothing. I started walking, cut across 2 fields and a drainage ditch. It took me almost 40 minutes to reach the edge of town. Then headlights lit up the road ahead. Rowan pulled up, eyes wide, one hand clenched around the steering wheel like it owed him money. He didn't say hi. He leaned out and asked, "What the hell did you bring out with you?" I thought he was joking. Then I saw Matt and Trev in the back seat, both staring dead ahead. Rowan told me after that last text, the truck went dead. Everything, engine, lights, even the power locks. Then the radio flipped on. Static, and something under it. Breathing, maybe, or voices that weren't quite voices. They sat in the dark for 20 minutes, until the truck started by itself. Later that night, we watched the footage. Everything looked normal until that hallway mirror. In that frame, clear as anything, was the woman. Long black dress. Face not really visible, just the outline of it. Features stretched too far apart. Not blurred like bad focus, but like something struggling to stay shaped. When I turned to look, she vanished. We were out near Wilmer, Arkansas, middle of nowhere basically. My cousin Ryan's trailer sat way up past a logging road where the hills start turning into real mountains. It was Halloween night, and we'd been drinking since sunset, passing around cheap whiskey and a pack of crushed beers someone had left in a cooler since Labor Day. There were 5 of us. Me, Ryan, his girlfriend Lexi, my friend Joel, and a quiet guy Lexi brought along named Caleb. He had one of those still unreadable faces, and he mostly just sipped his drink and watched the fire like he was waiting for something specific to happen. We tried to pull him into the usual trash-talking and ghost story routine, but he barely responded. Somewhere between the 3rd and 4th round of drinks, the Darnell house came up. If you grew up around Wilmer, you probably heard about it at least once. The story goes that some guy named Everett Darnell built the place back in the 50s, had a custom-made stone basement, hand-laid tile, the whole deal. Lived there alone for a while. Then one day, poof, just vanished. Left his truck, his wallet, everything. Last anyone saw of him, he'd gone down into the basement. Didn't come back up. No cops found anything. No signs of struggle. No neighbors saw or heard a thing. Eventually, the town stopped talking about it like a mystery and started treating it more like a warning. The place was cursed. Abandoned. Left to rot in a pocket of trees a mile past the ridge, and no one ever tried to move in after that. Folks claimed they heard weird sounds if they got too close, dragging noises or voices or the sharp smell of pipe smoke when no one was around. We were tipsy, bored, and had flashlights. It didn't take much convincing. Around 11, we grabbed our gear and headed out. The trail wasn't marked, but Ryan knew the way. Kind of. The cold settled in fast. My boots crunched through dry leaves, and the air had that sharp, hollow feeling like everything around us was holding its breath. The whiskey kept us warm at first, but I could feel my fingertips start to sting once we got past the tree line. Nobody talked much once we left the fire behind. Even Joel, who usually couldn't shut up, was quiet. The further we went, the more the trees pressed in, branches crowding close, the kind that snag your jacket when you're not looking. Caleb walked behind us, hood still up, flashlight low. He didn't even look at the house when it finally came into view. It wasn't much to look at. 2 stories, pale blue siding faded to gray and curling at the edges. The roof sagged, the porch tilted like it was trying to escape. There was an old screen door still hanging from one hinge, and someone had spray-painted a red pentagram across the front in sloppy lines that dripped like it had bled down the wood. It looked like a teenager's idea of a haunted house. I was the first to step inside. The cold inside hit different like cellar cold, the kind that settles in your spine. The air smelled like wet rot and dirt. My breath came out in thick puffs, and the floorboards creaked loud enough to make me pause with every step. The ceiling felt low, like the house had been built for someone shorter, and everything had this strange slant to it, like gravity didn't quite work right in there. We walked through like tourists in a condemned museum living room, dining room, a hallway that led to 2 tiny bedrooms upstairs. Most of the walls were stripped to bare boards. The wallpaper that remained curled like old skin. I remember tapping a loose light fixture just to break the silence and hearing it rattle like a wind chime. Ryan and Joel tried to make jokes to cut the tension, but it felt forced. Lexi stuck close to him, and Caleb, still quiet, was moving slowly through the place, pausing at each doorway like he was waiting for something to step through it. I watched him stand completely still in one of the bedrooms, staring at the window like it might change shape if he waited long enough. I drifted into the kitchen. It was mostly gutted empty counters, a stained sink, broken tiles. But one thing stopped me. All the cabinet doors were open. Not halfway, not hanging loose, every single one of them opened to a perfect 90-degree angle. Some of the hinges looked like they hadn't moved in decades, rusted into the wood, but they were all wide open like someone had deliberately gone through and arranged them that way. I didn't touch anything. Then I saw the basement door. It was tucked between the fridge space and the back wall, and it was shut. But there was a narrow sliver of yellowish light spilling out from underneath it, thin like a paper cut. I figured one of the others had already gone down there, maybe Caleb trying to get a rise out of us. I turned to call out, and that's when I realized I couldn't hear anyone anymore. No voices, no footsteps, no distant creak of the floor upstairs, just silence. It wasn't just the absence of sound. It felt wrong, like a vacuum had sucked the house hollow. I opened the basement door and called down, "Hey, you down there?" No answer. I figured I was being messed with. I wasn't new to that game. So I stepped inside and started down. The stairs were old, narrow, steep enough to make me nervous. The light I'd seen came from a bare bulb hanging from the ceiling by a wire, swinging just enough to throw slow-moving shadows against the walls. The basement was empty, no shelves, no old furniture. Just a wide, open concrete floor with 4 walls made of thick stone. But something had scratched into the concrete near the back wall. Long, jagged marks, like someone had dragged something metal across it over and over again. They weren't symmetrical or patterned, just angry-looking grooves, as if someone had been trying to dig with brute force and desperation. That's when the bulb popped. Not just flickered, popped. A tiny flash, and then I was standing in darkness. My flashlight flicked on immediately, but my hand was shaking, and the beam bounced across the walls like it was searching for something that might already be watching. I turned around, ready to leave, when I heard it. Breathing, slow, even, close. But it wasn't coming from the stairs. It was behind me. I whipped the flashlight toward the far corner, hard hammering so hard it made my ears ring. The beam shook as I scanned the stone walls, the scratches, the far edges of the basement. That's when I saw it, a door. Low to the ground, tucked into the far wall so flush with the concrete that I could swear it hadn't been there when I came in. It was wooden, blackened, like it had been soaked in oil or something worse. No handle. Just a thick, rusted latch on the outside. And it was open, barely. Just enough to see that the darkness inside wasn't regular darkness. It wasn't like the light couldn't reach it. It was more like the light refused to enter. The space beyond that gap was black in a way I don't think I've seen anywhere else. It looked hungry. I froze. My feet moved before my brain caught up. I backed up, one step at a time, keeping my flashlight on that sliver of a door. Then, without sound, it creaked wider, only an inch. But it moved, deliberately, and from the blackness came the dragging sound. Metal. Stone. Slow. Slow. I turned and ran. I didn't shout. I didn't warn anyone. I just ran. The stairs felt like they doubled in length. I slammed the basement door shut behind me so hard the walls shook and stumbled into the kitchen. Still no sound. Still no people. I tore through the house, room by room. Empty. No signs anyone had ever been inside. I stepped out onto the porch, heart racing, ready to scream, and there they were. All four of them, standing out in the yard, silent, not looking at me, just standing like they'd been waiting out there all night. What the hell, I gasped, half laughing from panic, trying to catch my breath. Lexi turned first. You went in by yourself, she said. I frowned. What are you talking about? I was in there for 10 minutes. You guys were right behind me. Ryan stepped forward slowly. No, man. You went in ahead. You went in ahead. Right when you crossed the threshold, something felt wrong. We heard you yell once. That was it. We never even stepped inside. I looked down at the porch. Dust. 4 pairs of footprints at the bottom of the stairs. 1 set going in. None coming out. I don't remember leaving the house. I don't remember walking back to the porch. I just remember standing there, shaking, looking at their faces, realizing something had gone very wrong. We didn't talk about it again. Caleb left for Arizona about a month later. Never said goodbye, just gone. Had moved in with me that summer to help fix up my grandfather's old place in Western Virginia. He didn't have anything tying him down, and I didn't have the money to hire professionals. The house was about as solid as a stack of wet cereal boxes, sagging porch, bad wiring, and a weird mildew smell that just wouldn't go away no matter how much bleach we used. We didn't have cable out there. Barely had internet, and even that depended on standing in the exact right spot near the window with your phone tilted up like you were dowsing for signal. By the time October rolled around, we burned through every movie, every podcast, every scrap of entertainment we could stream or pirate or drag out of a dusty DVD box. We were getting that kind of bored where everything starts sounding like a good idea. So one night, Ren says, out of nowhere, "You ever hear of the Marlowe place?" He was scrolling through some hyper-local message board he'd somehow managed to load. Threads about old buildings, abandoned stuff, people swapping stories. The Marlowe place came up in a comment, nothing detailed, just someone mentioning they wouldn't go near it. Apparently it had been sitting empty since the early 80s, one of those half-swallowed farmhouses buried at the end of a gravel path that didn't even show up on Google Maps. People said the family just left one day, no big drama, just stopped being there. Over time, the trees crept in and the road fell off the grid. We had nothing better to do. Ren framed it like a casual adventure. Let's just check it out, take some pictures. Could be fun. I didn't love the idea, but I also didn't want to be the guy who bailed because of some weird vibes. We packed a few things, headlamps, a flashlight, Ren's audio recorder, and a crowbar I brought mostly for comfort. We left just after dark, driving past the last gas station and veering off onto a dirt road that clearly hadn't been maintained since before either of us was born. When we finally stopped, the house was barely visible through the thicket of trees. You wouldn't even know it was there unless you were looking for it. The porch had half collapsed, and vines had wrapped around the railing like veins. The place looked like it had tried to disappear. I remember thinking it felt more like an abandoned photograph than an actual building. We climbed up the porch carefully, each board flexing under our weight, but somehow none of them gave way. Ren pushed on the front door and it just opened. No creak, no stuck hinges, just open like it had never been shut properly. Inside, the air was heavy and still. No wind, no animals scurrying. Just this thick, stale quiet. The wallpaper had peeled off in long curls. The wood floors were warped from moisture, and everything smelled like wet dust and drywall. There were no personal items left, no furniture, no clothes. Just blank spaces where things had been. We started poking around, mostly for Ren's recording. He was narrating stuff like he was doing a documentary. First floor entry, visible signs of structural damage. No recent occupancy. Smell suggests mildew, possibly black mold. He was hamming it up, but I could tell he was excited. For him, this was the closest thing we'd had to an event in weeks. In a hallway closet, he found a pile of old photo albums, most of them empty. One of them had a handwritten note on the inside cover, October 79th, last autumn at home. He flipped through it, but there was nothing inside. Just faded pages and some stains that looked like they might have been water damage or maybe something else. We moved upstairs. The first two bedrooms were completely bare, but the third, the one in the far back, still had something inside. A mattress on the floor. No frame, no sheets, just a yellowed, sagging mattress, the kind you know has lived through too much. And on the far wall, just above it, were these strange crayon drawings. At first I couldn't tell what they were. Scribbles maybe, but the longer I looked, the clearer they became. All the same shape hands, dozens of them. Long, wide hands with exaggerated fingers, no arms, just black fingers, each one stretching down from the top of the wall like they were crawling out of the ceiling. I stood there staring at it for a while, not really sure what I was feeling. It wasn't fear exactly, just this kind of slow, creeping discomfort, like I was looking at something that was still happening. I told Ren to stop recording. He laughed like I was joking, but I was serious. Something about those drawings just made me feel wrong. Like they hadn't been drawn, they'd been left there. He ignored me, started circling the room again, talking into the mic. October 31st, 2022. Multiple handprints, uniform design, possibly symbolic. Location suggests child's bedroom. And then he stopped, mid-sentence. Just stopped talking and looked at me. I think someone just went downstairs. I didn't say anything. We both just froze. We hadn't heard a door. No footsteps, nothing loud. But I swear the air shifted. The pressure changed, like the house exhaled underneath us. I clicked off my headlamp, total darkness. Then from below, burzest. That sound. Sharp, low, mechanical. It wasn't loud, but it was close. I couldn't place it at first. Ren leaned toward the stairwell. Is that clippers? The noise came again. Burst. Closer. I didn't wait to see what it was. We started backing up toward the hallway when we saw it, someone standing at the bottom of the stairs. Not moving. Just standing. His face was in shadow, but the way he stood was off. Too stiff. Like he wasn't waiting for us, like he already had us. His right hand was up, holding something metallic. The flashlight caught just enough of it. Clippers. He turned them on again. Burst. Then he started walking up. Not fast, not aggressive. Just steady. Each step calm and deliberate. The sound of the clippers whining louder with every stare. I grabbed Ren by the arm and yanked him back toward the far bedroom. We slammed the door and threw the latch. Not that it would have stopped anything. There's a closet, Ren said, voice barely above a whisper. We ducked inside. The slats in the door gave us just enough of a view to see the room. The door creaked open. The man walked in. He was wearing a red Arizona Cardinals jersey. That part hit weird, like something real in the middle of all this unreal. He didn't look around, just walked up to the wall, to the drawings, and stared at them. Then the clipper stopped. He stood there in silence for a second before saying quietly, like to himself, "Let me clean it up. Just a little." And he started shaving the wall. I'm not joking. He pressed the clippers to the drywall and began buzzing it like it was hair. Slow, steady strokes over and over, the blades biting into paint and plaster. White dust floating down like dander. Just a little. Let me clean it up. Just a little. I couldn't move. I just watched. And then something broke in me. I kicked the closet door open and pushed Ren through it. We sprinted for the stairs, took them two at a time, and burst out the front door without looking back. I didn't even check if he was behind me. I just ran until I hit the gravel at the edge of the road and kept going until my legs locked up. We didn't speak the whole ride home. I called a realtor that afternoon and put the house on the market. Ren left 2 days later. Halloween landed on a Friday that year, and my friend Mason had been hyping up this plan all week. Every old barn had a story, every hollowed-out church had a rumor attached to it. But Mason had his eye on one place in particular, this half-collapsed old house way out past Penner Hill. People called it the Bramble House. Nobody knew who it originally belonged to. Some said a farming family. Others swore it was a bootlegging hideout. Either way, whatever it was, it didn't last long. The story Mason latched onto was that the first people who lived there didn't even survive one full winter. They moved in, built it up, then all vanished before spring. The only thing left behind was the house, and it wasn't exactly welcoming. According to him, every person who tried to sleep there after that either ran off in a panic or started talking nonsense. You'd hear stuff like, "It's not alone anymore," or "There's something in the walls." One guy apparently walked 15 miles barefoot, completely silent, and then never spoke again. Mason was obsessed with this kind of thing. He'd spend hours on old forums or digging through local library archives, looking for records of hauntings, disappearances, symbols carved into trees. He wasn't just trying to scare people. He really believed in it. Said some places didn't want to be remembered, that they pushed back if he got too close. I didn't exactly buy it, but I liked Mason, and he had this way of pulling people into his momentum. So when he said we should go up there on Halloween night to see if the energy changes after dark, I didn't argue. I didn't say yes right away, but I didn't say no either. We left just after 8, dressed like it was any other night out, hoodies, jeans, boots. We didn't mind getting muddy. Mason brought a backpack with snacks, a cheap flashlight, and this little handheld recorder he liked using to document findings, as he put it. I didn't bring much. Just my phone and a pocket knife my uncle had given me the year before. The walk took about 40 minutes. We parked at the end of an old logging trail because his Honda would have broken an axle trying to go any farther. It was almost a full moon, so we barely needed the flashlight. The path was rough, roots everywhere, but we knew the way. By the time we crested the ridge and saw the outline of the Bramble House, something tightened in my chest. Not fear exactly, just this weird sense that I was about to do something I couldn't take back. Like stepping over a line. The house was barely standing. The roof in the back had caved in entirely, and the porch leaned so far to the right it looked like a strong wind could peel it off. One window on the front was shattered, glass hanging inward in curved shards. The frame around it bowed inward too, like the whole house had exhaled too hard and never bounced back. Mason didn't even hesitate. He walked right up the porch steps and pushed open the door like he had every right to be there. I stayed a few feet behind, letting him go in first. I think I told myself it was just in case there were squatters or animals inside, but really, I just didn't want to cross that threshold first. The front room was surprisingly intact. Some peeling wallpaper, a dusty mirror leaning in the corner, a few pieces of furniture shoved against the walls like someone had tried to clear the center of the room. There was a wooden bench under the window and a busted chair near the fireplace. It was quiet. Not dead quiet, more like the kind of quiet that listens. Mason pulled out his recorder and started narrating. October 31st, 2019. Location, Bramble House, northeast of Elbridge. Entering front room, structural integrity fair. I rolled my eyes but let him go. He was in his element. After a few minutes, he motioned toward the doorway on the left side of the room. "You good here?" he asked. I nodded. "Yeah, I'll hang back." He disappeared through the doorway, his flashlight beam flickering across the warped floorboards. I sat down on the bench by the window. It groaned under my weight but held. I figured I'd scroll my phone, maybe take a few photos, kill time while Mason did his thing. But the house didn't feel idle. It creaked, not from wind or weight, but like it was shifting in its sleep, like it had old bones that still remembered walking. I thought I heard Mason laugh from deeper inside, but it sounded wrong. Stretched out, thinner than it should have been. I waited maybe 10 minutes before I called out. "Mason?" Nothing. I called again, louder this time. Still nothing. Now, Mason had pulled this kind of thing before. Once he jumped out from behind a ditch wearing this ragged wolf mask, just to see if I'd scream. I did, so I figured he was hiding again, waiting to catch me off guard. I stood up and stepped through the doorway he'd gone through, into the next room. It was colder in there. I hadn't even noticed it until I crossed over. Not a breeze, just a drop in temperature that clung to your skin. The walls had been marked up, lines, circles, weird geometric loops, some drawn in chalk, some smudged like they'd been wiped partway off. In each corner, someone had made little piles of pebbles. Not random either, stacked, arranged, like someone had been doing something ritualistic and just stopped halfway through. Still no sign of Mason. I kept moving. Eventually, I came to what had once been a staircase. Most of the steps were missing or rotted through. I leaned around the banister and called again. Mason, come on, this isn't funny. That's when I heard it. Not footsteps. Something slower. It was the sound of something soft being dragged across wood, like a blanket or a hand. And then something happened I still don't know how to explain. I didn't hear a whisper exactly. I felt it. In my chest, like something deep inside me recognized a sound I hadn't actually heard yet. I took a step back, nearly tripped on one of those pebble piles. My skin buzzed like I'd touched a live wire. I pulled out my phone, 1% battery. I hadn't even realized it was dying. Tried to text Mason. The screen froze, never sent. Then I saw it. Someone, something, was standing just inside the next doorway. Not Mason. This thing was taller. Too thin. The way it stood was all wrong. Its body leaned like the spine didn't know how to hold itself upright. It wasn't wearing anything. Its skin looked dry and shiny at the same time, like wax pulled tight over old wood. I said, Mason, without thinking. My brain hadn't caught up yet. The thing twitched its head toward me. Fast, sharp, like it had heard something, only it recognized. Then it started moving. Not running, not lunging, just walking, slow and careful, like it was letting me decide how fast this would go. I ran, didn't even think about it. Just turned and sprinted back toward the front room, heart punching my ribs, feet slipping on the warped floor. I only looked back once, near the doorway, and there was nothing there. But the front room had changed. There had been one bench under the window. Now there were two. The chair near the fireplace was gone, and one of the benches had a fresh splinter along the seat, like someone had just stood up. The air smelled like wet stone, cold and heavy. I stumbled outside and yelled Mason's name into the trees. My voice echoed once, then again, then stopped. I started walking backward down the path, texting him again with shaking fingers, trying not to trip. Still no response. I told myself he was messing with me, that he'd pop out laughing at any second, that he'd show up back in town with some grainy photos and a story about how I'd bailed too early. But Mason didn't come back that night, or the next. His mom thought he was at his dad's. His dad thought he was with his mom. 4 days passed before anyone realized he was missing. They found his car still parked under the trees. Sheriff's deputies organized the search up the hill. They came back quiet. Nobody told me exactly what they saw, but I overheard one of them say real low, it didn't look recent. Mason's body was never found. Last Halloween, I heard someone spray-painted a warning on the road up the ridge in giant red letters. Don't wake it again. I believe them now. Halloween night in a town that barely qualified as one. Oak Ridge, Georgia. Population low enough that the only place still open past 10 was the gas station, and even that felt like it closed out of boredom some nights. I was staying with my cousin Emery, like I did every fall break. Her place always felt like the right kind of escape. Enough trees to get lost in, no one asking where I'd been, and a porch that creaked in a way that made me feel like time moved slower there. That night, I was out with 3 people I didn't really know. Emery's friends. They were all 2 years older, mostly from her school kids I'd met in passing but never hung out with. The kind of people you only end up with because someone else promises it'll be fun, and Emery had begged me to come. Said she didn't want to be the youngest. I think she just didn't want to be the only one scared. We were sitting behind the old baseball field, passing around a bottle of cinnamon whiskey someone's older brother had forgotten in their trunk. It burned going down but tasted like someone had dissolved red hots in rubbing alcohol. Still, I took my turn when it came. Made a face. Laughed like the rest of them. That's when Benji said he knew a house. Now, everybody around there knows a house. They grow on urban legends the way trees grow moss. Always a little different. Always too specific to be made up entirely. This one was supposed to be up past one of the old mining trails that had mostly caved in. No roof, missing wall, porch that looked like a busted jaw. We all nodded along like we'd heard that one too, but he swore this was different. Said he'd been there once in middle school but never after dark. And of course, he didn't want to go alone. So we went. The walk-up wasn't short. 20 minutes of tripping over exposed roots and ducking under branches, the trail narrowing with every step. The fence around the place was falling over in pieces, decorated with a half-dozen no trespassing signs that had faded to pale pink under the sun. Nails poked out at odd angles, and the gate was wired shut with a plastic hanger, like someone ran out of time or patience trying to keep people out. They told me the story while we climbed the last stretch of hill. Back in the 50s, two brothers lived there alone after their father died in a quarry accident. One of them, no one remembered which, snapped. Killed the other with a meat hook out in the barn. Left him hanging overnight. When their mother found out the next morning, she lit the kitchen on fire and stood in the middle of it. The Hook brother disappeared. Some people said he ran off into the woods and died out there. Others thought he burned with the house, just not enough to leave behind. They never found him. The cops barely looked. And then there was the dog, the weird part. Supposedly, it stood outside the ruins and barked for 3 straight days after the fire. Never moved. Never ate. Just barked, nonstop. Until it didn't anymore. They said when the firefighters found it, the tongue was gone. Not ripped out. Just not there. I didn't say I believed them, but I didn't say I didn't. Truth is, I was just tipsy enough to go along with anything. That warm, numb feeling that tells you nothing bad ever really happens to people like you. We slipped through a break in the fence, and Benji led the way to a side door half hidden under ivy. The wood was warped, swollen from years of weather, and he had to shoulder it hard twice before it groaned open like it was waking up. Inside smelled like wet dust and metal, something sour underneath it all, like old grease or forgotten fruit. The floor sloped hard to one side, and the walls had these big square tin panels nailed into them. Some were bent. Others looked burned. They had stuff tied to them. Black thread, tiny bones, little glass shards, even a couple teeth. I remember thinking it looked like someone tried to make wind chimes from whatever they had in their pockets. But there was no wind, and they still rattled sometimes. Nobody said anything. I think we were all waiting for someone else to call it weird first. We walked through slowly, stepping around broken boards and pieces of furniture that barely looked like furniture anymore. The wallpaper was peeling back in long curling strips, and everywhere on the walls, on the door frames, even carved into the floor were these strange symbols, not letters. Just loops and angles that felt deliberate but impossible to read. There was one room nobody wanted to go near. The far end of the house, where the roof had collapsed and the wall had opened up into the woods. Vines dangled through the rafters like ropes. The floor was warped, sunken in the middle. When I asked what it used to be, Emery just muttered, "That's where the hook came through." I opened my mouth to ask what she meant, but before I could, Benji turned to me and said, "You're the one who doesn't believe. Go sit in there." It wasn't mean exactly, more like he wanted to see if I'd do it. Emery handed me her phone and told me to time 5 minutes. I took it and stepped into the open room. The floor gave a little under me, soft like it was soaked through underneath. I sat down on a rotted plank near the center. The others stayed just outside the doorway, silhouettes in what was left of the light. First minute was quiet. Then came the sound faint scratching, like someone dragging a key slowly along metal. Too slow for a mouse. Too measured. I stayed still, tried to breathe through my mouth. That's when the smell hit me. Not rot. Not mildew. Sweet. Rotten sugar sweet. Like something had gone bad trying to smell good. I looked up. Something flickered across the top beam, just for a second. Not a full shape, just movement. Fast enough that I wasn't sure if I saw it or just wanted to. That's when I saw it. The dog. It was standing just beyond the missing wall, where the tree started again. Mottled fur, long legs, jaw hanging open too far. Its tongue, if that's what it was, dangled off to one side, cracked and dry. It wasn't barking, wasn't moving, just staring with eyes that didn't reflect light. They absorbed it. Behind me, one of the tin panels clinked. Just once. I didn't think. I stood up so fast the floor crunched beneath me. I ran out the way I came, past Emery, past Benji and the others, straight down the hall and through the open door. I didn't stop until I hit the grass on the other side of the fence, still clutching Emery's phone like it owed me an explanation. They were laughing when they caught up. I didn't say anything, just opened the video app. It had been recording the whole time. I hadn't meant to, just wanted to use the timer. But when we played it back, we saw it. After I sat down, something moved behind me, on the ceiling. A shape distorted, almost liquid crawling along the beams. It moved wrong, too fluid, too fast, like it knew we were watching. None of us said anything for a while. Benji finally broke the silence. We have to delete that. But Emery didn't. She kept it, said she wanted to show someone later, but I don't think she ever did. We walked back in silence. The path seemed longer on the way down. When we reached her street, we saw the lights first. Her house lit up like a theater. Every bulb on porch, hallway, bathroom, even the attic crawl space with no ladder. Her dad's truck wasn't in the driveway. He was supposed to be gone until morning. We didn't go in. We stayed on the neighbor's porch until the sun came up. Next day, her dad asked why we left the TV blaring. Said he came home around 3 and heard voices coming from the attic. There's nothing up there but insulation and dust. That week, all 3 of them, Benji, Emery, and Lana, started getting random nosebleeds. Sometimes in class, sometimes in their sleep. Heavy, messy ones. Emery said she saw the dog again outside her school, just standing at the edge of the track field, staring. She said she knew it was the same one. I didn't ask how. That was 5 years ago. We don't really talk anymore. It had been years since I'd gone trick-or-treating, but that Halloween, Bree somehow convinced me. She said we'd do it ironically, just us and a couple of pillowcases, hitting up the nicer part of town for full-size candy bars. No costumes, just layers and hoodies. We figured if anyone gave us crap, we'd laugh it off and blame nostalgia. Ellis tagged along. He'd only been in town a few weeks, staying with his uncle on Parkson Lane. The guy worked nights at the power station and pretty much let Ellis do whatever he wanted, which was how we ended up wandering around after dark, passing porches lit orange and fake cobwebs sagging with dew. We didn't have a plan beyond walk until we run out of houses, which turned out to be sooner than expected. Around 10, porch lights started flipping off and the sidewalks emptied. A couple blocks past the gas station, it was just us, a cold breeze, and the sound of leaves getting dragged around by the wind. We were about to turn back when Ellis spotted a trail. It wasn't even a trail, really, just a break in the brush between 2 properties, leading into a patch of woods that separated the neighborhood from the hills beyond. I wouldn't have noticed it if he hadn't pointed it out. "What's that?" he asked, already stepping toward it. Bree rolled her eyes. Seriously? But he was already halfway through the opening. I don't know why we followed. Boredom, mostly. Curiosity, a little. It didn't feel dangerous, just like one of those detours you take because you're 17, and Halloween makes everything feel a little more alive. The path was narrow and uneven. We walked single file, flashlights on. I figured it would dead end at some fence or drainage ditch, but it didn't. It just kept going, uphill now, winding through trees that felt older than anything in town. The further we walked, the quieter it got. No wind, no crickets, just the crunch of our feet on dead leaves. Then we saw it. The trees opened suddenly, like we'd stepped through a curtain, and there it was, an old house sitting crooked in the middle of the clearing, 2 stories tall, charred and sagging. Half the porch had collapsed, and what was left leaned forward like it was bowing to us. The windows were gone, and the walls looked scorched black, like the whole thing had been on fire but never quite finished burning. None of us said anything for a second. Then Ellis whispered, "I think this is it." "It?" Bree asked. "The place my uncle told me about. He said there's a house up in these woods, burned out decades ago. Used to belong to a railroad foreman or something. People say it's cursed. Perfect, Bree muttered. Great Halloween finale. Ellis didn't hesitate. He stepped onto the porch, testing each board like he'd done this before. Bree and I exchanged a glance, then followed. The floor groaned but didn't give. Inside, it was darker than I expected. Our flashlights barely reached the walls. It felt like walking into a swallowed breath, quiet, heavy, still. The air had this musty sharpness, like old wood in something else I couldn't place. Not rot. Not smoke. Just off. The main room was stripped bare. No furniture, just debris and warped planks. The fireplace was choked with gray ash. One corner still had shreds of wallpaper curling away from the wood like peeling skin. We stepped carefully, avoiding holes and soft spots. "Let's check upstairs," Ellis said. "Why?" Bree asked. "Because we're here." It was the dumbest reason, but somehow it made sense. He found the stairs near the back, behind a crooked archway. They looked too narrow, too fragile, but they held. Upstairs, there were 3 rooms. The first was empty. The second had what looked like part of a dresser, moldy and collapsed. The third farthest down the hall was different. The door was almost shut. Ellis pushed it open. In the middle of the room was a single wooden chair. Nothing else, except for the hoodie. Black. Folded perfectly on the seat. Not dusty, not damp. Just clean. Bree stopped in the doorway. "Nope. I thought you said this place was abandoned," I said, not even trying to hide the edge in my voice. Ellis didn't answer right away. "It is. I think." That's when the air shifted. It didn't get colder, it got stiller. Like the room was holding its breath. Then came the sound. Below us. One single dragging scrape. Bree's head snapped toward the hallway. That wasn't outside. None of us moved. Then the stairs creaked. One step. Then another. Slow. Deliberate. I turned off my flashlight. So did the others. We ducked into the second room and crouched behind the broken dresser. My chest felt tight. Every breath felt too loud. Then came the whistle. One long, broken note. No melody. No rhythm. Just air pushed through teeth. Ellis reached for his pocket knife and dropped it. It hit the floor with a dull clink. The whistling stopped. For a second, everything was dead quiet. Then it started again. Closer now. Scraping. Whistling. Walking. Something passed the doorway. Just a glimpse, his back. Tall. Thin. Wearing a brown coat that dragged behind him. One shoulder higher than the other. His neck wrapped in something thick and pale. Rope, maybe. Or gauze. He didn't look at us. He walked into the room with the chair. The door creaked shut behind him. Ellis stood. Bree hissed at him to stop, but he stepped toward the door and pushed it open. Then he froze. We looked. The man was gone. The hoodie was gone. In its place, sitting neatly on the chair, was Ellis's pocket knife. We didn't speak. We ran. Down the stairs, through the hall, back into the woods. We didn't stop until we hit the sidewalk near the gas station. My lungs were burning. My legs felt like jelly. None of us said anything. Back at Bree's, we made Ellis promise not to tell anyone. Not because we were worried people wouldn't believe us, but because we weren't sure we believed it ourselves. The next night, I asked him if he ever got his knife back. He said no. But when I emptied my trick-or-treat bag onto my bedroom floor, it was sitting right on top of the candy. I threw it in the trash behind the hardware store the next morning. That Halloween, my cousin Jalen talked me into driving down from Cincinnati to check out this place he was renting in eastern Kentucky. It wasn't much of a place, honestly. Some old house on the edge of a forest near Redwater, out past where GPS stops working and you start questioning your life choices. He'd found it through some sketchy Craigslist post, which should have been the first red flag. Rent was almost nothing, but once I saw it, I got why. The thing was barely standing. Sagging roof, cracked windows, porch slanted like it wanted to lie down and die. No electricity. No plumbing. No heat outside of a wood stove that looked like it hadn't been cleaned since the Reagan administration. But Jalen loved it, said it was Cripcore, and tried to pass it off like he was being ironic. I'm living the dream, man. Beer, Bluetooth, firewood, no rent cops. Freedom. He had this way of talking where you couldn't tell if he was joking or if the joke was just on him. He showed me around like he was proud of it. Fridge didn't work, obviously, so he'd buried some cans of beer in a cooler packed with melting ice. There were old mattress springs in one corner, a lopsided futon in another, and a single lamp sitting there with no plug. But he had a speaker and weed. So apparently everything was fine. By the time it got dark, we were already a few beers in. He lit a joint, handed me the flashlight, and leaned in with that grin I'd learned to dread. "You ever heard of the Corman House?" I said no, obviously. He got that look like he was about to change my life or something. "Dude, it's just up the hill. Like, not even a full mile. Some busted old place where a mining family died or disappeared or something. I forget. Locals won't go near it. Total Halloween material. Let's go." I gave him the classic, "I'm not doing that" look, but he'd already gotten his boots on and was shoving another flashlight in his coat pocket. Honestly, I should have pushed harder to stay put, but I was buzzed. And Jalen has this way of bulldozing right through your better judgment. We set out around 9. The path wasn't really a path, just a sort of thinning in the trees behind his place. The deeper we got, the colder it felt. Not dramatic, just sharper, like the air had teeth. About 30 minutes in, we saw it. It looked worse than I imagined. 2 stories leaning hard to the left, porch sinking into the dirt, windows gaping open, roof sagging in the middle like it had been kicked in from above, siding curling off the frame like it was trying to escape. I stopped short. Jalen didn't. He was already heading up the porch steps, which creaked loud enough to make me wince. "You coming, or what?" Inside, it smelled like everything that should never be wet was wet. Insulation, wood, maybe even old carpet. The smell hit instantly, moldy, musty, wrong. Every step we took made the floor complain. The boards flexed and popped under our weight, like they were waiting for us to give them a reason to snap. Jalen kept swinging the flashlight around like he was narrating a documentary. Peeling wallpaper, weird stains on the ceiling, wires hanging from where fixtures used to be. We walked through 3 rooms before he found the staircase. It was narrow and steep, and I made him go first because I didn't trust the steps to hold both of us. The upstairs was even colder, and the air felt heavier, like it was trying to press us down. Then we heard it, a dull thud, not a crash. More like something heavy landing in the next room over. Jalen stopped, turned to me and raised an eyebrow. "Wind," he whispered. "Sure." Wind. The hallway ahead was darker, tighter. At the end, one door hung open halfway. I didn't want to go near it. Everything in me said no. Jalen walked straight to it. He pushed it open with one hand, and the flashlight beam cut through thick dust like it was underwater. Inside, the room looked like it had belonged to a kid. Faded cartoon wallpaper clinging to the walls in strips, books rotting on the floor. A rusted bed frame in the center of the room. That's when I saw them. Gouges in the far wall, just above the window. 4 deep parallel scratches, almost straight but uneven in length. They looked too wide for any animal I knew. Too deliberate. "I don't think we should be here," I said, keeping my voice low. Jalen didn't respond. He was staring at the bed. "There's something on it," he whispered. I didn't want to see. But I looked. It was a deer. A fawn, probably, curled up in the center of the bed frame like someone had placed it there carefully. Its legs were folded under it at the wrong angles, like it had been posed. No blood, no obvious wound, and no face. Where the eyes and snout and mouth should have been, just smooth fur, no openings, no indentations, just a blank surface stretched tight across the skull, like it had been sealed shut at birth. It didn't look dead. It looked erased. I couldn't move. I don't even think I blinked. Jalen whispered, "What the hell?" but I barely heard him. Then the 4 creaked downstairs. Once, then again, then a 3rd time. Jalen's hand shot out and turned off the flashlight. Total darkness swallowed the room. The only sound was our breathing. Fast, tight, too loud. Another creak, closer now. Then one more, on the stairs. Jalen grabbed my wrist. "We go now," he mouthed. We moved, slowly at first, then faster, keeping to the edges of the hallway. I nearly slipped on the top step but caught myself. At the bottom, I turned, just for a second. There was something at the top of the stairs. It was tall. Too tall for the frame of the hallway. Its back was hunched, arms long enough to drag along the walls. Its head looked human for one split second, until it turned slightly and I saw the face. Or, again, the lack of one. Smooth skin where eyes should be, no nose, no mouth. Just this pale, stretched canvas. It shimmered in the low light, like plastic over raw muscle. It didn't move. It didn't make a sound. Jalen shoved me. I didn't even feel my legs moving. We just ran. Down the slope, through the trees, not even checking if we were still on the trail. Branches slapped our arms. My lungs burned. We didn't speak. Didn't look back. We just kept running until we saw the porch light of his place, even though I could have sworn it wasn't on when we left. We got inside, slammed the door, and shoved the couch in front of it without a word. Sat on the floor, panting. Listening. Neither of us slept. Morning came. When the light finally filtered in through the cracks in the wall, we looked at each other and silently agreed to not to talk about it again. I was 22 when we drove out to Brennan's uncle's property in the mountains near Clayton, Georgia. Halloween night. Late. Later than we planned. The only reason I said yes to this whole thing was because Brennan wouldn't shut up about the Ridge House, said it was local legend, and everyone who grew up there had been out to see it at least once. Supposedly abandoned since the late 60s. Everyone had some version of the story, and no one really agreed on why it had been left to rot. But it was one of those rite of passage spots. That kind of thing. Stupid dare territory. There were 4 of us. Me, Brennan, his cousin Lacey, and her boyfriend Marcus. I'd met Marcus maybe twice before that night. He was one of those people who says weird stuff in a deadpan way and then stares at you to see if you'll laugh. Most of the time, you don't know if he's serious or just bored. Lacey was fine. She and Brennan had spent every summer at their uncle's cabin, which was about a half-mile down the road from where we parked. Ridge House wasn't on any map. We got there by hiking through a dense stretch of pine trees that suddenly opened up into this quiet little clearing. And I mean quiet. No wind, no buzzing, nothing. The air felt too still. Marcus made some crack about elevation and how the bugs didn't like being that high up in the mountains. Brennan nodded like that explained everything. I didn't say anything. I already felt off, like my body knew something my brain hadn't caught up to yet. The house looked worse than I expected. One corner had fully collapsed, and the porch sagged like it was just barely hanging on. But the door was still there, still open, almost like it was waiting for us. I remember how the leaves didn't crunch under our feet when we stepped onto the porch. They should have. They just kind of shifted. Inside, it was just as dead. No smell, which was weird. You expect a place like that to stink old wood, rot, maybe dead animals. But the air was dry and weirdly cold, like a basement that hadn't been opened in years. There was no furniture left. No glass in the windows. Just scraps of wallpaper peeling down the walls in long strips. You could tell where things used to be, where a dresser had left a shadow on the wall, or where a light fixture had fallen and left a rust stain. Lacey pointed out a coat hook near the base of the stairs. It was still bolted into the wall, shaped like some kind of animal. Not quite a deer, not quite a wolf. Something in between. She said her uncle told her a family had lived here until their daughter went missing. No one ever said what happened to her, just that the family packed up overnight and never came back, left everything behind. That's when we split up. Brennan wanted to check the kitchen in the back. Lacey and Marcus stayed by the stairs, still whispering. I drifted down a narrow hallway off to the left that looked like it led to a back office or maybe a storage room. The floor creaked a little, but not as much as you'd expect for a house that old. I stepped inside, and my phone immediately started glitching. Full signal, but nothing worked. Messages froze. Camera wouldn't open. I tried rebooting it and got stuck on the loading screen. There was this faint rectangle on the wall, like where a painting had once hung. The more I looked at it, the more my chest tightened. It wasn't panic. It felt like gravity was leaning forward, like something was pulling me toward that empty space. I blinked, and for half a second, I saw her. She was just there. Not a blur, not a shadow. Just a woman standing with her back to me. Brown dress, short black hair, and then she was gone. When I turned around, I noticed something I hadn't seen before. A small square door set into the floor, maybe 3 feet across. The wood looked dry, like it would crack if you stepped on it, but it held. There was a faded chalk mark drawn over it, some kind of circle with lines running through it. Not random, intentional. I called out to Brennan, but my voice felt swallowed. No answer. That dense, pressurized feeling came back. My ears popped like we were climbing altitude fast, and it made my stomach roll. I leaned forward, just 1 foot on the trapdoor, and something in me snapped to attention, like my whole body was saying, nope, not down there. Then I heard Brennan's voice, from the opposite side of the house. It sounded distant, muffled, like he was yelling through a wall. I backed out of the room fast. As soon as I stepped back into the hallway, the pressure lifted. I could breathe again. I found Brennan standing at the foot of the stairs, staring upward. Lacey and Marcus were gone. I walked right up next to him, said his name twice before he finally turned his head. His eyes looked flat, like he wasn't all there. They went up, he said, barely above a whisper. But they're not up there. I didn't ask what he meant. We just started up the stairs. The whole upstairs was one long hallway with 3 open doors on the right side. First door, nothing but dust. Second door, strips of wallpaper fluttering like something had just moved. The third door is where everything shifted. There were footprints. Dozens of them. All small. Bare feet. They started at the far wall, led to the window, then doubled back. Over and over. No prints leading out. That's when I heard Lacey's voice. She wasn't screaming. Just talking, calm, quiet, like she was telling someone a story. I looked around, but it wasn't coming from any of the rooms. It was below us. Under the floor. I could feel the warmth through my shoes. Brennan said, "They're in the crawl space." I didn't wait. I was already moving. Back in the office. The chalk symbol was smudged now. I don't remember touching it. I don't remember deciding anything. I just opened the door and went down. The space beneath wasn't a crawl space. It was a chamber. 10 feet wide, maybe 8 feet tall, with old brick walls and a dirt floor. A single light bulb hung from a wire, still glowing. The rest of the house had no power. Lacey was standing in the far corner facing the wall. Marcus was next to her, eyes closed, perfectly still. I stepped forward, but the ground felt off like it was sloped, even though it looked flat. My legs felt heavy, like I was dragging them through mud. Neither of them moved until I touched Marcus's arm. He dropped instantly, just collapsed like he'd been switched off. Lacey turned and stared at me, eyes wide. "You're not supposed to be down here," she whispered. I grabbed her arm, tried to pull her toward the ladder, but she didn't budge. She kept glancing past me like someone was standing behind me. I didn't turn around. Then Brennan dropped in behind us. He didn't say a word, just walked straight past, knelt by the far wall and started digging. With his bare hands, his fingers shredded open, bleeding into the dirt. He didn't stop, not even when I yelled his name. Lacey screamed. That broke it. She tore away and scrambled up the ladder. I didn't hesitate. I threw Marcus over my shoulder and followed. Brennan never moved. We ran until we hit the gravel road. No one looked back. Lacey bent over and threw up. Marcus came to, slowly, muttering something about the woman under the house. Brennan never came out. We called the sheriff's department from a gas station near the main highway. Told them where we'd been. Left out a lot. They went out there with a search team. Said the crawl space had collapsed. No chamber. No ladder. No sign of Brennan. They called it a sinkhole. Said it wasn't safe to dig. His parents held a service 2 weeks later. Open casket even though there was nothing to bury. They let us speak. None of us talked about what actually happened. Lacey moved to Oregon this year. Marcus changed his number. I stopped going out on Halloween.